Would you want the ability to hear other people's thoughts? Of course you would. Everyone answers yes to that question until they think it all the way through. For example, what if other people could hear your thoughts? What if they could hear your thoughts right now? Sometimes we have thoughts that even we don't understand. Thoughts that aren't even true, that aren't really how we feel, but they're running through our heads anyway because they're interesting to think about. If you could hear other people's thoughts, you'd overhear things that are true as well as things that are completely random, and you wouldn't know one from the other. It'd drive you insane. What's true? What's not? A million ideas, but what do they mean? That's what I love about poetry. The more abstract, the better. The stuff where you're not sure what the poet's talking about. You may have an idea, but you can't be sure. Not 100%. Each word, specifically chosen, could have a million different meanings. Is it a stand-in? A symbol? For another idea? Does it fit into a larger, more hidden metaphor? I hated poetry until someone showed me how to appreciate it. He told me to see poetry as a puzzle. It's up to the reader to decipher the code, or the words, based on everything they know about life and emotions. Did the poet use red to symbolize blood, anger, lust? Or is the wheelbarrow simply red because red sounded better than black? The same person who taught me to appreciate poetry also taught me the value in writing it. And honestly, there's no better way to explore your emotions than with poetry. If you're angry, you don't have to write a poem dealing with the cause of your anger, but it needs to be an angry poem. So go ahead, write one. I know you're at least a little bit angry with me. And when you're done with your poem, decipher it as if you just found it printed in a textbook and knew absolutely nothing about its author. The results can be amazing and scary, but it's always cheaper than a therapist. I bought a spiral notebook to keep all of my poems in one place. A couple days a week, after school, I'd go to Monet's and write a poem or two. My first few attempts were a bit sad. Not much depth or subtlety. Pretty straightforward. But still, some came out fairly well. At least, I think they did. Then, without even trying, I memorized the very first poem in that notebook. And no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to shake it from my head, even today. So here it is, for your appreciation. Or amusement. If my love were an ocean, there would be no more land. If my love were a desert, you would see only sand. If my love were a star, late at night, only light. And if my love could grow wings, I'd be soaring in flight. Go ahead. Laugh. But you know you'd buy it if you saw it on a greeting card. Just knowing I'd be going to Monet's to write poetry made the days more bearable. Something funny, shocking, or hurtful might happen, and I'd think, this is going to make for one fascinating poem. To me, I suppose, these tapes are a form of poetic therapy. As I tell you these stories, I'm discovering certain things. Things about myself, yes, but also about you. All of you. And the closer we get to the end, the more connections I'm discovering. Deep connections. Some that I've told you about, linking one story to the next, while others I haven't told you about at all. Maybe you're even discovering some connections that I haven't. Maybe you're one step ahead of the poet. And when I say my final words, well, probably not my final words, but the last words on these tapes, it's going to be one tight, well-connected, emotional ball of words. In other words, a poem. Looking back, I stopped writing in my notebook when I stopped wanting to know myself anymore. If you hear a song that makes you cry and you don't want to cry anymore, you don't listen to that song anymore. But you can't get away from yourself. You can't decide not to see yourself anymore. You can't decide to turn off the noise in your head. Sometimes I would stop by Monet's for a hot chocolate on my way home. I'd start my homework, or sometimes I'd read, but I wasn't writing poetry anymore. I needed a break from myself. But I loved poetry. I missed it. And one day, after several weeks, I decided to go back to it. I decided to use poetry to make myself happy. Happy poems. Bright and happy, sunshiny poems. Happy, happy, happy. Like the two women pictured on the flyer at Monet's. They taught a free course called Poetry to Love Life. They promised to teach not only how to love poetry, but through poetry, how to better love ourselves. Sign me up. D7 on your map. The community room at the public library. The poetry class began at the same time the last bell rang at school, so I'd race over there to try and make it without being too late. But even when I was late, everyone seemed happy to have me there. To provide the feminine teen perspective, they called it. Imagine 10 or 12 orange chairs arranged in a circle, with the happy women from the flyer sitting at opposite ends. Only problem was, from day one, they weren't happy. Someone, whoever made that flyer, must have digitally turned their frowns upside down. They wrote about death, about the evilness of men, about the destruction of, and I quote, the greenish, bluish orb with wisps of white. Seriously, that's how they described it. They went on to call Earth a knocked-up gaseous alien needing an abortion. Expose yourself, they said. Let us see your deepest and your darkest. My deepest and my darkest? What are you, my gynecologist? So many times I wanted to raise my hand and say, so when do we get to the happy stuff? The stuff about loving life? You know, poetry to love life? That's what the flyer said. That's why I'm here. In the end, I only made it through 3 of those poetry groups. But something did come out of it. Something good? I wonder. See, someone else was in that group. Another high schooler with a perspective adored by the older poets. Who was it? The editor of our school's very own Lost and Found Gazette. You know who I'm talking about. And I'm sure you, Mr. Editor, can't wait for me to say your name out loud. So here you go, Ryan Shaver. The truth shall set you free. You've known this for a while, Ryan. I'm sure of it. At the first mention of poetry, you knew this one was about you. You had to. Though I'm sure you must have thought, this can't be why I'm on the tapes. It wasn't a big deal. Remember, this is one tight, well-connected, emotional ball I'm constructing here. Would you like to hear the last poem I wrote before quitting poetry? Before quitting poetry for good? No? Fine. But you've already read it. It's very popular at our school. Some of you may recall it now. Not word for word, but you know what I'm talking about. The Lost and Found Gazette. Ryan's semi-annual collection of items found lying around campus. Like a love letter tossed under a desk, never discovered by its intended love. If Ryan found it, he'd scratch out the giveaway names and scan it for use in an upcoming gazette. Photographs that fell out of binders. He scanned them too. History notes covered in doodles by an extremely bored student. He scanned them. Some people may wonder how Ryan found so many interesting items to scan. Did he really find them at all? Or did he steal them? I asked him that very question after one of our poetry meetings, and he swore that everything he printed was found purely by chance. Sometimes, he admitted, people did slip items they found into his locker. Those, he said, he couldn't vouch for 100%. That's why he scratched out names and phone numbers. And photographs, as a rule, couldn't be too embarrassing. He'd gather 5 or 6 pages of good, quirky material and print up 50 copies. Then he'd staple them together and drop them off at random places throughout school. Restrooms, locker rooms, on the track. Never in the same spot, he told me. He thought it was fitting for people to stumble across his magazine of stumbled across items. But guess what? My poem? He stole it. Each week, after our poetry group, Ryan and I would sit on the library steps and talk. That first week, we simply laughed about the poems the other people had written and read. We laughed about how depressing they all were. "Wasn't this supposed to make us happy?" he asked. Apparently, he signed up for the same reason as me. After the second week of class, we sat on those library steps and read some of our own poems to each other. Poems we'd written at different points in our lives. But only happy poems. Poems about loving life. Poems we would never read to that depression-loving group of miserable poets inside. And, as poets never do, we explained ourselves, line for line. The third week, we took the biggest chance of all and handed each other our entire notebooks of poetry. Wow, that took a lot of courage. For me, definitely. I'm sure for you too, Ryan. And for the next 2 hours, with the sun going down, we sat on those concrete steps, turning pages. His handwriting was horrible, so it took me a bit longer to read through his poems. But they were amazing. Much deeper than any of mine. His stuff sounded like real poetry. Professional poetry. And someday, I'm sure of it, kids will be forced to analyze his poems out of a textbook. Of course, I had no idea what his poems meant. Not exactly. But I felt the emotions precisely. They were absolutely beautiful. And I felt almost ashamed at what he must have been thinking as he went through my notebook. Because reading through his, I realized how little time I'd spent on mine. I should have taken the time to choose better words. More emotional words. But one of my poems grabbed him, and he wanted to know more about it. Like when I wrote it. But I didn't tell him. I wrote it the same day a group of students got angry that someone had the nerve to ask for help regarding suicide. Remember why they got upset? Because whoever wrote the note didn't sign her name. How insensitive. So Ryan wanted to know why I wrote the poem. With that one, I told him, the poem had to speak for itself, but I was interested in knowing what he thought it meant. On the surface, he said, the poem was about acceptance. Acceptance from my mother. But more than that, I wanted her approval. And I wanted certain people, in this case, a boy, to stop overlooking me. I asked if he thought it meant anything deeper. Part of me was joking. I thought he'd figured out my poem exactly, but I wanted to know what a teacher assigning the poem might want his or her students to discover, because teachers always overdo it. But you found it, Ryan. You found the hidden meaning. You found what even I couldn't find in my own poem. The poem wasn't about my mom, you said, or a boy. It was about me. I was writing a letter to myself, hidden in a poem. I flinched when you told me that. I got defensive, even angry. But you were right, and I felt scared and sad by my own words. You told me I wrote that poem because I was afraid of dealing with myself, and I used my mom as an excuse, accusing her of not appreciating or accepting me when I should have been saying those words into a mirror. And the boy? I asked. What does he represent? While I waited for your answer, I searched my backpack for tissue. At any moment, I knew I might cry. You told me that no boy was overlooking me more than I was overlooking myself. At least, that's what you thought it meant. And that's why you asked about the poem. You felt it went deeper than even you could figure out. Well, Ryan, you were right. It went much, much deeper than that. And if you knew that, if that's what you thought, then why did you steal my notebook? Why did you print my poem, the poem that you yourself called scary in the Lost and Found? Why did you let other people read it? It was never a lost poem, Ryan, and you never found it, so it did not belong in your collection. But in your collection is exactly where other people found it. That's where teachers stumbled across it right before their lectures on poetry. That's where classrooms full of students caught up my poem, searching for its meaning. Do you know what Mr. Potter said before handing out my poem? He said that reading a poem by an unknown member of our school was the same as reading a classic poem by a dead poet. That's right, a dead poet, because we couldn't ask either one about its true meaning. Then Mr. Porter waited, hoping someone would fess up to writing it. But that, as you know, never happened. So now you know. And for those of you who need a refresher, here it is. Soul Alone by Hannah Baker. I meet your eyes. You don't even see me. You hardly respond when I whisper, hello. Could be my soulmate. Two kindred spirits. Maybe we're not. I guess we'll never know. My own mother, you carried me in you. Now you see nothing but what I wear. People ask you how I am doing. You smile and nod. Don't let it end there. Put me underneath God's sky and know me. Don't just see me with your eyes. Take away this mask of flesh and bone and see me for my soul alone. And now you know why. So, did your teachers dissect me properly? Were they right? Did you have any clue at all it was me? Yes, some of you did. Ryan must have told someone, proud that his collection made it into the curriculum. But when people confronted me, I refused to confirm it or deny it, which pissed some of them off. Some even wrote parodies of my poem, reading them to me in the hopes of getting under my skin. It was all so stupid and childish and cruel. This doesn't seem like a big deal, does it? No, maybe not to you. But school hadn't been a safe haven of mine for a long time. And after your photo escapades, Tyler, my home was no longer secure. Now, suddenly, even my own thoughts were being offered up for ridicule. Very nice, Ryan. Thank you. You're a true poet.